Hi, I'm Hopkins with Baltimore Heritage, and I'm going to be joined today by Curtis Durham with the Baltimore Museum of Industry. And welcome to the second of our series, In the Shadow of Industry, as we explore historic industrial sites on Baltimore's waterfront within an easy walking distance of the Baltimore Museum of Industry. Before we jump into Hercules Shipbuilding, today's topic, I want to say thank you to PNC Bank. Thanks for making this series possible. All right, Hercules Shipbuilding, if you've ever been to the BMI, or even if you've just driven down Key Highway, you probably have noticed the wonderful neo-colonial red brick building right on the road there. That's Hercules Shipbuilding's headquarters, or it was for many years. Today it's actually occupied by the BMI. They use it for their offices. But before either of those, it was a cannery. It was the Lewis Grebb packing company. They packed fruits and oysters, of course. Everybody packed oysters. And in fact, they were one of, in the heyday, more than 70 packing companies, canneries along Baltimore's waterfront. In fact, the Baltimore Museum of Industry's museum building is built around an old cannery itself. But we're going to talk about shipbuilding. We're not going to talk about canneries today. And Hercules was not so much a ship builder from scratch, but a ship repair company. And I guess ships are like cars, or at least all of the cars that I've ever had, in that when you buy them new, they're all sleek and they work great, but in a very short number of years, they start to fall apart and they leak and they creak and they do things like that, and they need to be repaired. And that's what Hercules did. In fact, Hercules specialized in two different types of repairs. One is repairing cargo holds. If your cargo hold leaked, this is where you came. But they also retrofitted cargo holds. So if you had a boat that was outfitted to carry bananas into Baltimore's harbor, and there were lots of boats carrying bananas into Baltimore's harbor, but in World War II, you wanted to change out so that you could carry munitions or other supplies for the war effort, you came to Hercules to do that. The second type of repairs they specialized in was battening. And we've all heard the phrase batten down the hatches. Battens were wood strips and then later metal strips, and they were used to hold things tight, including the lids for hatches. Hatches, of course, were the passageways between above deck and below deck. And if it was a gray and rainy day and you were a sailor out on the bay, you hoped that your ship captain went to Hercules to get its battens redone, so that when it started raining and the waves started piling in, you could be down in your berth warm and dry rather than cold and wet. Hercules was part of a long line of shipbuilding companies that was here on the harbor. Before the Industrial Revolution, in the early 1800s, you had people like Isaac McKim, if you know the McKim Center over by the post office on Fayette Street. Isaac McKim was experimenting in different hull designs that would eventually become the famous Baltimore Clipper ships. In the years before and after the Civil War, a gentleman named Isaac Myers was caulking ships. He owned the largest black-owned ship caulking business in the country. Ship caulking is when you use hemp or other sort of fibrous materials to stuff into the cracks of the hull of a ship to keep the water out. So I guess Isaac Myers was trying to keep water out of a boat from below, and Hercules was trying to keep, with its battens, was trying to keep water out from above. Water, obviously, both the friend and the enemy of all boats and ships. And then during World War II, the Bethlehem Fairfield shipyards, one of two, I believe, that were established in the effort to launch a ship a day. And at Bethlehem Fairfield, in the 4 or so years that it operated, I believe it launched about 1,500 ships. And if my math is correct, that's about one ship every 3 days. Really incredible. So Hercules in good company here. After the war, Hercules eventually leased the space to a freight company and leased their office building, that brick building. Also, one tenant was Raytheon. It had its radar and submarine sort of sales and service division here, and then eventually sold it. And for a while, it was used to make cement. This was a cement company had it, and we were making cement here on the waterfront. But today, the Baltimore Museum of Industry occupies it and has offices there. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Curtis.
Thank you, Johns, and thank you again, PNC, for sponsoring this video series. Between 1996 and 1997, an underwater archaeological expedition was undertaken to determine what kind of boats are along our side of the harbor here at the BMI. 7 were discovered, one of which is the Governor R.M. McLane. named for Governor Robert Milligan McLane, who was a United States ambassador, House of Representatives member, and the 39th governor to Maryland. The Governor R.M. McLane was commissioned to be the flagship of the Maryland State Oyster Police Force, which battled pirates in the Chesapeake Bay. Those pirates were defying local ordinances and laws, depleting the local oyster population, which is no good. In doing so, they were also destroying some coral reefs that these animals fed on. Some of these pirates came down from New England, where the oyster population had already been decimated. So if you want your oysters, you got to take control of the population. The Governor R.M. McLane also served as a patrol craft in World War I for about a year and a half to 2 years. She was decommissioned in 1954 and found her way here to the docks on the shore at the time that Hercules owned this land. If you come down and see her, she's right on our campus here, next to the big number 4. Some of you might be wondering why she is still submerged in water. That is for 2 reasons. First of all, it's keeping her in the water is an important part of the object's provenance, which just means the history of the object. That's where she landed, and that's where she's going to stay. The second important factor is that we determined that removing her from the water would likely result in her total destruction, and that's no good. We want you guys to come down and see and enjoy and learn more about her. And with that, back to you, Johns.
All right, thanks, Curtis. I am enjoying these videos because I'm learning so much. We had a pirates coming down from New England, and we had an oyster police to try to battle them. Fascinating, really fascinating. All right, I'm going to wrap up by going out of the Museum of Industry here and jumping into the water. Not literally, it's way too cold for that, but figuratively. Curtis mentioned that the Governor McLane is part of an archaeology site, and that's true. There is an underwater archaeology site that's listed with the Maryland Historical Trust right outside these doors. In addition to the Governor McLane, there are 6 other ships that are sitting on the bottom of the bay. 2 wooden scows. If you're new to nautical terminology, those are basically flat bottom boats that carry things. And then 1 boat, and let me get the name right, an iron compressed barge, whatever that is. I don't know what an iron compressed barge is, but it's sitting down in the bottom there also. A number of years ago, scuba divers, archaeologists with scuba gear from the Maryland Historical Trust went down there and documented what was there. So we know that there are the boats down there. What we don't know exactly is how they got there. It seems unlikely that Hercules did a bad job repairing them and they sank right outside their front door. That seems highly unlikely. But we don't know if they were sunk on purpose. Did they arrive here and they couldn't be repaired? Or did they arrive here and they just sort of sat and slowly sank to the bottom? Maybe further scuba donning archaeologists will figure that out. But for now, we know they're down there. So I'm going to close by inviting you to come on out, check out the Baltimore Museum of Industry. Inside, I think they're going to open at least for small groups, but also outside. They've got a number of wonderful collections outside, including this archaeology site that's underwater. Thanks so much, and we will see you next time.